Welcome to the typical Skeptic podcast, where we dive deep, you decide. Questioning the matrix from UFOs, where the shadows unknown reside. Rob Khalil busting myths like ghosts in the night. Paranormal pros, secret space ops, yo, we keep it real, no fright. Typical skeptical seeking, never sleeping on the lies. Aliens, Anunnaki, black ops in disguise. From abductions to ancient scripts, we flip the script wide. TSP style, mile after mile, truth can't hide. Hold up, TSP crew assemble, we dismantle the fable. My lab's targeted souls breaking out of the stable. Dogman howling, Bigfoot prowling, cryptids in the mist. Mandela the fifth twist in reality, can't resist the twist. Soul trap snapping, reincarnation mapping, holographic dreams. Near-death visions, out-of-body missions, waking up the teams. No censorship here, we fear no elite scheme. Conspiracy kings ringing bells, hear the freedom ring. The skeptical seeking, never sleeping on the lies. Extraterrestrials, interdimensional highs. Welcome to the typical skeptic podcast, where we dive deep, you decide.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I hope the intro played okay. Obviously, we're having issues, but I have two of my favorite guests today. Someone I literally look up to in this industry because in 2018, I always say this, in 2018, before I even had a podcast, I started mine in 2019. I was watching Mathieu from FKN and he was already going at that time. And then I'm added my friend Michelle today. Michelle, the Earth Grid Rescue Mission. She's a big fan of Chris's, and she's gonna join us. I wrote a blurb about it. I wrote today on Typical Skeptic Podcast. I welcome Michelle Whitney, the Earth Grid Rescue Mission, and Mathieu, Forbidden Knowledge News. We'll dive deep into the hidden history of Earth's energy grids, ley lines, suppressed technologies, consciousness, recent energy, and the humanity is waking up to the forbidden truths long buried by mainstream narratives. Chris brings a trademark depth of conspiracy, spirituality, and the paranormal, while Michelle provides grid worker insight and energy wisdom for a multidimensional discussion. You can follow Chris at forbiddenknowledge.news or on YouTube and Rumble, and you can follow Michelle on YouTube. And thanks everybody for coming. How's everybody doing today?
Hey Rob, thanks for having me. Hey Michelle, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm kind of fangirling out. Rob, I've watched you for quite a while too, and I know we run in the same circles because I'm friends with Dawn over at March 4th Productions and Stephen over at BG Cast Podcast. So it's a real privilege and an honor to be able to be here today. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Chris, I don't think I ever asked you this. What got you into podcasting? Because like I said, back in 2018, I was already watching you. You had already started then. I never asked you that. Did you have I know you've had experiences, but did you have experiences back then that kind of prompted you to get into this?
Well, it's an interesting progression of how I got really into this, but it all started around 2012. Whenever I was kind of lost, I was just starting to become aware that our reality isn't as it seems. I was going through a bad divorce. I was at a corporate job that I was not happy with. And I just started first diving into these interesting videos I'd see on my YouTube feed. And then that drugged me into the conspiracy realm. So I started reading again. I started reading from some of my favorite authors. And I had so much information bundled up inside, and I was dying to talk about this, but I couldn't. I was in South Louisiana, 2013. My family pretty much disowned me during that time because this is all I was talking about. I had very little friends, and they were very turned off by these topics. So I'm like, I need to do something else. I started a Facebook blog called Forbidden Knowledge News, started sharing some of the information, and that eventually turned into a YouTube channel because I eventually figured I need to talk to people that know more about this than I do. And I would really love to do something like I was listening to, of course, Coast to Coast, but also Rex Bear was doing his thing back then, and Higher Side Chats. There was a couple of others that I was really into at the time, and I was like, I think I can do this. So I started a YouTube channel, and that's all it was going to be at first. And that really started blowing up. But I have to thank Charlie Robinson. He was the one who suggested podcasting to me. He came on very early in the game, and he had just released his first book, and he's like, you need to turn this into a podcast. He hooked me up with his friend then, Cory Hughes, who had a whole podcast network, but it was focused on crypto at the time. So I got in touch with Cory. We hit it off, and we started to rebrand the podcast network and started with my podcast, Forbidden Knowledge News, took it from YouTube, put it on a podcast in about 2016. And that's where it all started from there. I didn't have any of my personal metaphysical experiences yet, because at that time I didn't even hit the spiritual realms yet. I was starting to dig into it a little bit, but not practicing in any way. So the paranormal metaphysical experiences came later around 2020, but that is how the podcast got started.
That's so interesting. And Michelle, did you have any questions you wanted to ask them, like off the bat?
Well, I just feel like I'm hearing my own testimony coming out of Chris. Yeah, I too. So, I'm actually podcasting now because of Rob. I didn't think I'd ever be doing podcasting. I came from corporate jobs, and I work for Veteran Affairs, and my life right now is kind of crazy, but I have found, because of this amazing community, that I have true friends. And my research is like yours. It began years ago, and I was actually studying the work of Renetta Jones. And when her untimely passing happened, I was so just hurt and disturbed by what I was finding. I kind of got hurled into this, and now I feel like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But I started having spiritual experiences as well. And so it's been quite a year. I mean, I know we're almost to the end of it. We're here in October, but this has probably been one of the most insane years of my life. And I think that kind of happens, right? When you have this awakening and you kind of see what is going on, and you're able to have that discernment and go, okay, something's rotten in Denmark, guys, right? Like, there's something amiss here. I don't like to take the victim mentality, or targeted individual is very real. But I have been experiencing that. And I really just want to say that the community is my glue. This is my family, because like you, my family disowned me. My relationship of almost 8 years fell apart because of this. So now I really can't go back, because I've had too much taken. But I do believe we're kind of like, I always say they make diamonds under pressure, right? So no, I don't have any questions, Rob. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, and like, it's weird. Like, once you figure out this stuff, it's like we can't go back. I could never go back to living a normal life. Would you feel the same way, Chris?
100%, man. I have nightmares that I am sitting at my corporate job sometimes, and I'll wake up in a cold sweat, like, oh my God, thank God that wasn't real. But yeah, there's no way I could go back to just not knowing some of the things that I've come to know over the years. And it's not just the conspiracy realms, but the nature of reality itself is so far beyond anything that I could have ever understood even 10 years ago. And I still have no idea what is really going on with the nature of reality. I have plenty more considerations than I did before, but I also have a lot more faith and spiritual connection than I ever did before. And I think that is one of the most powerful things that has happened since 2020, since the world started going topsy-turvy, is more people seeking that spiritual connection. But it takes, like what we've been through, like what we've been talking about, it takes a lot of realizations and navigation through the madness. But unfortunately, this year, like you said, it's crazy. I agree. And I see a lot of people going the wrong direction with things. Of course, the conspiracy realm has been infiltrated, because that's what happens. Any good movement that is for the people, that is beneficial, will be infiltrated by three-letter agencies and the lizard people, and it will be turned against them. And unfortunately, that's what we've seen happen over the past couple of years. You have your TikTok influencer with the 2-minute conspiracy video of bad information that they just got from another TikTok influencer that is regurgitating information. But the problem is the algorithm props people like that up because, like I said, it's been infiltrated. There's also your high-level players now who are in the independent media space that will give you 80% good information, but the other 20% will lead you down a path of insanity. And that's what I've also seen happen, is a lot of unfortunate psychosis amongst people that get into the conspiracy realms. They get too deep into certain topics and it becomes their reality, and their perception shifts into a very negative state, and they can't get out of that. And they're trying to navigate these waters of basically psychosis that they've been led into, because we have been in a massive MK Ultra experiment since at least the 1960s when they started doing these experimentations. But now it's implemented. Now it's being used in real time with our technology and within the medical system. All of our institutions are interconnected to serve a purpose of MK Ultra experimentation on the masses. And excuse me, many people hear that and they'll think I'm crazy, but once you dig deep enough into any of this, all roads lead to that. There has been an infiltration into all of our institutions by psychopaths that are attempting to gain control over the masses through psychological manipulation. And the psychological manipulation is basically weaved into everything that we interact with on a daily basis. So yes, this year is a little crazy, and I'm interested to see where everything goes. I think that what we see on the TV and social media is highly theatrical and doesn't reflect what is real in our reality. We have to go outside and talk to real people and interact and do things like this, actually interact with real people to find out where we're at. And that is one of my favorite things to do these days, is find out where the collective really is, as opposed to the nonsense that we see on TV and social media. So that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, it seems like you've been covering, I was looking at your channel just now, it seems like you've been covering a lot of like spiritual warfare, and like I know you had Nathaniel Gillis on, the Nephilim Death Squad, like a lot of like nature, reality, and spiritual warfare. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, that's always coming up, and more now these days, of course. But I think it's very important for people just to become aware of the nature of attack that we are under. But also, I don't bring it in a fearful state. It's always with hope weaved in. It's always under the understanding that with this knowledge, we can defeat this. And the only way to play their game is to check out of it. But for sure, there's definitely a spiritual war going on that we need to be aware of. And I also do a lot of shows on how to navigate that, how to heal, how to integrate our traumas and not be part of the system and not have to worry about anything that they throw at us, and how to do it all without being afraid of anything.
That's a really good point. Michelle, did you want to talk about on that? Did you want
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like Chris is like, we're on the same wavelength. I'm just making mental notes here. And I do apologize. I'm sorry. I'm kind of in a new place. I've gone through like 7 states in the last month. And so this is the only place I get some internet signal. So I do apologize. I'm just out for a little walk trying to ground, but I'm trying to stay away from the street traffic. So I'm so sorry about the noise disturbance. Thank you. Thanks for having some grace with me. But yeah, you mentioned people like, I love Nathaniel Gillis. I've watched Rex Barrett, the Leak Project, for years now. I remember when his channel was super tiny, and now he is really just exploded. And, that's where I found people like Robert Stanley, who I know Rob has had him on his show. These were all
a couple of times. It's been a while though.
I love them. And they were very instrumental in helping me kind of navigate these waters. And what I have learned is that you're absolutely right. There is I don't want to get Rob banned. There are elites or family members that trace their bloodlines back that are working with forces in the spiritual side and making contracts to usher in end time events. And you mentioned like the medical industry, the technology, even like things as something seems so silly as like TikTok, but we know who owns and runs TikTok, the CCP. And if you look into what those people are doing over in those countries, I mean, there's just mass genocide going on, especially for young people, people under 18. They seem to be the currency that has been utilized to, usher in their agendas. And their agenda is waging an end times war against the creator or source. And so, you talk to people all the time and they think you're crazy, but if you really look at the evidence, if you look at things like the patents, if you look at these companies, like Palantir, even I used to work for the phone company and the satellite companies for over a decade and a half. And I have seen the technology they use with the alphabet soups, the 3-letter agencies. I have seen them do things where they have violated our constitutional rights. They are, now at this point, they are psychologically grooming the future generations so that they aren't thinking for themselves. We know that they have targeted the reproductive rates, right? The systems of how are even our hormones, right? That this is just a random statistic, but like I'm 40 years old and the level of estrogen that my grandmother had at my age was 3 times the amount that I have. This has all been done strategically through pharmaceuticals and pharmacia and the food industries. And now they're doing it with the entertainment. And I mean, I know like most of us watch, oh my gosh, what's it called? I can think it's Pickle Rick right now. What is that show, Rob?
I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking of.
Rick and Morty. Sorry, Rick and Morty. I haven't had any coffee yet this morning. Rick and Morty, or The Simpsons. And you're like, oh my gosh, are they predicting the future? Well, what I have learned is that they have these programs with the My Labs or the MK Ultra, like Voice of God or Project Looking Glass. And what they're doing is they are using children and looking down timelines. I'm being very vague here because like I said, I don't want to get you banned off YouTube, Rob. But they are looking down timelines and they are then creating content that we look at as, entertainment, right? And what does that do? Well, that gets into the subconscious mindset, and you're not really realizing how sensitive the brain is. The brain's incredibly fragile. It's easily manipulated, especially with the technologies. And we know that they have infiltrated the dreamscapes. I know Indigo Angel talks a lot about that, and she comes on Rob's show too. And so all of that to say, I think that all of us have kind of had this awakening and this calling, and we're doing the work, right? We are trying to get people to wake up and realize, hey, like something's amiss, but I like how you said you don't do it with fear mongering. I'm not about fear either. I'm about empowerment because I do believe we ultimately do hold the power, that we are the ones that are capable of stopping it. And like you mentioned, through conversations like this, it's like a little time capsule, but it's very thought provoking. And all you have to do is plant that little seed in someone and it'll grow, right? And that'll trickle and it'll extrapolate out and affect other people. So while it does seem scary, and we've been all through hard times, I know that. But I'm very hopeful about the future. I'm very hopeful because I do believe ultimately we are going to end up turning the tides in favor of humanity and
Michelle,
taking back our sovereignty.
Let me ask you, I want to go back to something you were talking about, how they're using essentially children to remote view the future and they're implanting this in our cinema. That's very interesting. I've been exploring synchromysticism a lot with different guests and getting different understandings. I haven't yet explored this possibility. I've heard of it before, but based on everything that I've explored so far and all the evidence, I wonder how much hands-on activity is going on surrounding the predictive programming in films, the symbolism, the connection with high impact events. To me, I look at that and I think it's impossible for that to be orchestrated in any way. This has to be some sort of retrocausality or metaphysical energy that is causing this symbolism to show up in the films. But when I hear things like the Project Looking Glass and they're using people to get information from the future, essentially, and then I look at books that have come out in the past, like The Last President and The Adventures of Baron von Trump. All of these almost impossible connections that have come out through books and cinema that connect these, like I said, high impact events or reality in general. How does this happen? And you are alluding that this may be something that is more of a manufactured thing than we realize. Could you talk a little bit more about your understanding of that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So just bear with me for a moment. This is a non-linear answer. There are 300 satanic bloodline family members that are part of what you would call the Luciferian Brotherhood, the Great White Brotherhood, the Druidic Council, and they have 5 departments that they operate through, and that's going to be the Freemasons, the Kabbalah, the LDS, Latter-day Saints, the Jesuits, the Holy See, and they have other things they use too, like their Satanic Council has a I think they call it like the Satanic Temple. Okay, these are all of their departments. And what they are is they are grand high priests and priestesses in many, many secret orders and societies that have held on to ancient mystery school knowledge. And so how does that become our reality? Well, they are controlling everything, the media, the food, the medicine. And what they need is they need us in order to power this reality. We're like the generator or the battery, but we're also the ones that have to make decisions because it's a free will planet. So the way that they do that is through manipulation. Now, if you've ever looked into the early work of Ashiana Dean, she talks about the memory shield, or what they in the science community call junk DNA. This DNA is memory connection to source, but it also holds certain abilities, or what we might call gifts. Now, I think these are things everybody's capable of doing. It takes some work, but I think we all are capable of remote viewing or having intuition. And so what they do is they look for children with certain blood types and certain lineages, and they take them a matter of ways. They take them either from school. There are portals that are located in the schools, and there's 6 military dumb bases that they take them to from the ages of 4 to the ages of 10, and they are fully trained up. And you can look at people like Arkeem Ra, his testimony, that's what I am alluding to. But they also, they use, like, the chakras are portals. And so what they will do is they will take them either in the dreamscape or they'll take them from school. At the end of the day, they'll give them a screen memory, right? So you think you picked your kid up and your kid was on, a field trip looking at dinosaurs all day and has this wild imagination. That's really not what's going on. And how are they able to do this? Well, they do this through trauma bonding and the fractaling of the soul. So, it's kind of hard for us with our human mindsets. And I'm not saying people aren't intelligent, but, we are really kept in the closet about this vehicle we call death. And we don't understand fully what it is that our bodies are capable of doing. And the chakras, like I mentioned, are portals. So they will take these children, they'll fracture them, and they have these advanced technologies where they can clone you, they can create a container, and etherically, this fracturing of the soul can be captured and contained in this clone. So I'm sure, we hear about altars and stuff like that. That's what I'm talking about. Right. So, the reason why they're putting it in the media, there's a few of them. I appreciate you allowing me to be long-winded. So I'm trying to get to the point.
Yeah, that's great.
So what they do with the media is, one, they're psychologically grooming you, right? Like right now we're hearing all about Project Bluebeam, this 3AI Atlas. There's going to be an alien invasion, right? We were hearing all these things. Well, the other thing that they like to do is they like to get us to do their dirty work. And why is that? Well, Ashiana Dean, when she talks about the memory shield, the layer of the body where the DNA is, that has been genetically manipulated so that it's not active. And when you don't have activeness in the memory shield, you go through incarnation after incarnation, and you never ascend or raise the vibration, essentially creating what they call karma. So they are Satanists, and they believe that to karmically relieve themselves, they have to put the information out there. And I think it was actually Rex Bear on the Leak Project that gave this really silly analogy, but it actually was very eloquent. He goes, if I'm selling poison apples and I have a sign that says poison apples, and you buy one and you eat it and you get poisoned, it's not my fault because I told you the apples are poisoned, right?
Yeah.
So I know it's kind of a stupid one, but that's essentially what they're doing is they're trying to groom us subconsciously and consciously to, acquiesce us all a certain direction, but they're also trying to karmically relieve themselves. And here's the thing, whether you're religious or not, there are fallen entities that have gone against the template of source and the intentions of what was given with this free will. They have abused those powers. And this is a war they never intended to win. Okay, so to them, it's not about winning. To them, it's about how many casualties, how many of the children of God or source can we take down with us? So I think, we talk about a simulation or a plasma universe. We know because of Dr. Lloyd Pye, he had a wonderful seminar he gave called Everything You Know Is a Lie. And he talks about how we were finally at this precipice of medical technology where they could look at the deoxyribonucleic acid, so your DNA, they could look at it at such a magnified rate that you could see coding in it. And that coding would not be present without the genetic manipulation. And so while we are constantly told, oh, we are so advanced, we're at the most advanced humanity's ever been, our ancestors were just living in a cave, painting with some paint that lasts for 50,000 years, but all they were doing was hunting and gathering, and they hadn't even found fire yet, right? Like, we're given such a convoluted mindset that we are the most advanced we've been, but that's not the case at all. So I do think what's going on here is that, especially with the conversations like this, I think people are starting to figure it out because, like I said, they can't help but tell on themselves, and they do use a language of symbolism. And if you have ever been, around someone who's a Freemason, it's kind of like sign language. So while they're not always verbally speaking, when they say, do you have eyes to see and ears to hear, what they're talking about is, do you have the critical thinking and the discernment to look beyond the programming of what we have been told is how you communicate? Because they are doing it through their language, which is hand gestures, colors, symbols, and displays like things like the seals, the state or the province seals if you're out of the country. So I hope that answers it a little bit.
Yeah, it's basically Twilight language.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
What was that?
I think the ghost in the machine is getting angry at. I'm not sure.
Rob, did we lose you?
You still there, Rob?
No, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah. I was just thinking that was a lot, Michelle. That was really intricate. I agree with you though. And it's I'm just trying to think. Yeah, it's we're in a conundrum, I think, So how do we get out of this is the question. How do we start to turn the tide in our favor is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think?
You go first, Chris.
Well, that's the question of the ages, isn't it? Because we've never had that freedom. We've always been under the thumb of the ruling class, at least in our lifetimes and our grandparents' lifetimes, and pretty much all throughout written history, we have been under the thumb of some kind of parasitic ruler. And when we try and imagine a future without that, how impossible is it? We only have our fantasy portrayals of utopias, which when we try to implement that in reality, it never works out because there's always that negative ruler or that negative power control system that is in place. How do you get rid of a foundation that is controlling everything and that is psychopathic?
Yeah.
So we've been under this throughout history, and right now is the first time in my lifetime that I've seen people question realities, that I've seen people and masses try to understand what's happening, see the corruption that's going on. And again, this leads to the situation that we're in now. There's chaos. I think that what has to happen is we have to go through all the chaos. We have to experience this. There's going to be a period of time of major adjustments, and we are going through a period of basically destruction right now. All the old systems are being torn down because they're not going to work with a collective that is awakened. And the more people awaken, the more the old systems crumble. But that brings in another problem. The lizard people don't want their systems to crumble, so they're going to do everything in their power to prevent that. That's why now we're seeing things like Palantir, AI law enforcement, and AI in general trying to take over everything because they believe this is going to be their new god. This is going to be the ultimate control system that can get its tentacles into every single thing and every single person. And then we can have a matrix within a matrix that pretty much traps everyone. And this is their ideal utopia. We can't play the game if we're going to win. We can't participate with those systems. We can't be integrated with this technology, at least the way it's headed now, at least the way direction that they want it to go. We cannot participate with it because any participation, they are going to steer it in their direction. That's why we have the left-right paradigm. That's why we have the voting system and politics and everything the way it is. It's two-party system. They want people in those extreme sides of everything so they don't come together in the middle and see what is really happening. So until we can do that, until we can check out of the extremes, check out of the political system, check out of the need for their corporatized products and poisons, until we can check out of all that and not participate in the system, that is when real change happens. And it's starting. More and more people are checking out, and that's where you see the chaos building and building. And unfortunately, it seems that it has to get worse before it's going to get any better. We have some shit to go through. And I think that the best way to navigate that is without fear and with love. And also, another thing is what they want you to do is get up in arms and go out and protest and quote unquote fight and fight each other. What going out to the protest is going to do now and in the very near future is they're going to target you as a domestic terrorist. They're going to have your face on file. They're going to have you out there with whatever cause and whatever sign you're protesting with, and now you're part of a database. You're the enemy, which is another agenda that is floating out right now, making the American people the enemy, domestic terrorists on both sides. If you can't see that, you need to step back a little bit from your political delusions and take a look at what's really happening right now. We are under the guise of we need this immense security and AI law enforcement and all these new systems because the evil illegal aliens are going to come in and take over everything and kill your children and everything, that all the propaganda about that. Well, that's fine. Okay, clean up the illegal aliens, whatever. 4 years from now, this technology is going to be implemented. It's going to be in place. If you think the other side isn't going to use it for whatever agenda, crazy, insane ideology that they're going to put through, you're just as insane as them, because they're going to use it for their side and all their crazy agendas, and the pendulum will swing back. And with each time, this technology will get bigger and stronger. And that's why we just have to check out as much as possible.
I agree. That's really well said, Chris. There was a comment from Kriya here. She says, I'll put it on the stage. She says, I also see a rise in white supremacy. She says, it's real weird, blatant racism now. I kind of see that. Like, my friend's a real hardcore MAGA, and he watches that, and it seems like they, like you said, Chris, like what they're doing with like the illegal aliens. I mean, I do see a lot of illegal aliens coming into countries, but I don't know what the purpose is behind that. If there's I think it's like you said. I think they want us to all fight and like get up in arms about this shit. And it seems like it's blatant in our face. I don't know.
100%. That's just all about division, divide and conquer, problem, reaction, solution. We're seeing it all play out right now. All you have to do is just, like I said, step outside of your political ideologies, whatever you think you believe, and take a look at a bigger picture. Go on, say, if you're a Republican, go on a Democrat's Facebook feed one day and see what they're looking at. And then if you're a Democrat, go on a Republican's feed and see what they're looking at and see how extreme each side is and what they're trying to pump in. It's the same thing, but it's just spun a completely different way.
That's a really good point. Michelle, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of really great things you said. So I just can't answer anything but be long-winded.
You're good.
That's just how I answer. So I agree with you. I really do. I have some opinions about what they're doing in America. And I think, for example, like if you look at Hawaii and you look at all these fires and you look at all these children that were coming across the border, there were some really good investigative journalists in the independent media that had the forethought to pay attention. And what they were seeing were people that didn't look like they should have children coming across with droves of children. And if they were young, they were knocked out, right? Like literally knocked out with like medications, right? So that they couldn't be stirred or awakened. And if you look at the numbers of missing children, right? Like, so we had the first president, the one before Trump, and he just opened the floodgates, right? Now, part of that is because they want to create division. I always say there's one race, and that's the human race. We're all brothers and sisters, and we're all divinely made. And they have created labels and created political parties and groups and belief systems so that everybody argues over who is right. It's all a distraction. And it's part of their, as David Icke would say, their totalitarian tiptoe. And I always remind people, we're over here arguing about who is right. And we're literally dealing with the utmost of evil incarnate, the very definition of evil incarnate. Sorry, I had a notification. My apologies. We're dealing with the most evil incarnate consciousness, and they're doing teamwork like they're Olympic gold medal winners, right? And we're over here arguing about whose religion is correct. I think that there is a way to win all of this. There's a couple ways. And I've done shows with Rob about this. I've done the Knowledge of the Forever Time that talks about how you use the megalithic structures, the Nazca lines. It's a star map, and that we can literally leave through pyramids that are all over this planet and walk off into the stars, which is where I believe we are meant to go. The other thing we can do is, they talk about, now I always say this word wrong, the Merkaba. I know some people say Merkaba, the Merkaba body. Activating that is literally like our throne of God. That is our ability to transcend and traverse the stars. And I do think it is a game. And how you had mentioned the way to win the game is by not participating. I think what's going to happen is this. I think they're going to try to usher in another world war. But I would like to think that people are awake enough now that they're not buying the BS anymore. You can look at things, especially if you're trying to explain this to somebody who is not into the woo or the mysticism. You can take worldwide events like Pearl Harbor. There's been declassified documents that talk about how Pearl Harbor was completely staged to bring America, with our free will, rushing in to into the world wars that we've had, and we know they've all been manufactured. The other things that's too is that, so I do decoding on the Luciferian Brotherhood, and I had mentioned those seals. So like anyone that looks up like their city seal, like I did one on Pittsburgh for Rob, and what I showed is these represent the contracts, these represent the lodges, these represent the orders, the societies. the types of magic that they're using darkly, where they're holding their ritual sacrifice grounds at, who has the authority in the area. And if you have those seals proportioned and ratioed correctly on the jurisdiction that it's applied to, and you know how to read it, you can completely expose them. You can expose where their dumbs are at. You can expose where they're doing their perverse sacrifices at. And I think that as we start to expose these strongholds, we are capable of bringing back what they call the well springs, right? So ultimately, humans hold so much power. We really do. We really were divinely made. And I really think that what it is to play the game is to remember. It's to awaken that junk, I said air quotes, junk DNA, your memory shield, and to step into your power and remember that we all are fractals of source, and we are creators. And that ultimately we are the ones that give power to this whole quarantined simulation. Because I do think we are in, like how you mentioned the game inside the game. So I'm just going to be long-winded for another minute here. I had this spiritual experience or activation in February. And right before that, I had started seeing like Titans in the ley lines. I was like, I tell the story about doing my dishes in my kitchen, looking out the window, and the tree in the backyard turned into a fully conscious giant that I could telepathically communicate with. And what I realized is that they have plugged all their technology into Mother Earth, into Gaia, their electromagnetic grid. Their technology is their housing mainframe for some of these consciousness in the spirit realm to traverse through. They're using it as like the quantum computer. My personal opinion, I think that there are entities frozen under the ice in Antarctica that can't quite get out, but their consciousness is able through these quantum computers to go from one reality to another and communicate, kind of like a radio. Now, I could be wrong, and I'm willing to look at things and say I'm wrong, but all of that I'm trying to say is that we do hold the power. There are things, if you're willing to be critical and you're willing to look away from cognitive dissonance, there's patents, there's historical events, there's whistleblowers. There is true hardcore evidence that can be utilized in an intelligent way and with discernment, that you can see the curtain come up, right? And the bullshit, excuse my language. But I really do think that that's how we turn the tide of humanity, Chris and Rob, is we stop playing the game and we take our power back.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and Chris, do you believe that this is like a prison planet, or do you believe in the soul trap theory? Like, do you feel like if we go to the light, we get reincarnated, or like what's your take on that? Do you have a?
This is something that I believe is partly another psychological operation, and it really, in my perspective, it depends on your perspective of things, but there is more and more people that are exploring Gnosticism just because of what I said earlier. We've never experienced true sovereignty as humans on this planet. We've always been under the thumb of some ruler, some parasite, and we've never been able to have that experience. So a lot of people, with all the other realizations that are coming out right now, are turning toward Gnostic understandings. And not only that, you mentioned David Icke earlier, the work of David Icke, and it explores the possibility that even when we die, we are greeted by archonic entities that pose as our loved ones and send us back. And all this planet this realm is a recycler that we are sent back to, so the archons basically can feed off of us. That is a completely bleak perspective, and I can't get down with that mainly because of my own experiences and the things that I have come to understand through meditation, psychedelics, and like I said, my own very powerful spiritual experiences. And I can't speak for anyone else, but what my experiences point to is that there is home, that we can go home after this experience, that this is an experience for experience. And even the archons are working for source, that even the malevolent beings are part of this experience, that we couldn't learn and grow without them. They are like matrix maintenance in a sense, and we ultimately control the show either way. So that's where I'm at with everything, and I do not think we are on a prison planet.
I love that. Yeah. So do you think it's like a school, like we're meant to like come here to learn lessons?
Essentially, more or less.
Yeah.
It's our, I think it's the experience tool. It's the way that whatever we are can have experiences, and the best way to understand it now is through our technological understandings. We're at a point in our evolution where we're immersed in technology, and the only way we can understand our reality is with that comparison. That's why we have things like the Matrix and simulation theory and quantum theory. And I bet in 10, 20 years, we'll have a completely different understanding collectively of the nature of reality. And we may even call it something else, and we'll experience reality completely differently.
I agree. And Michelle, did you want to talk on that?
I agree with him. I really do, because my personal belief system is that whatever your intention is set to, that's what will happen. When I use the word death very loosely, I kind of think it's almost like a death to come here. You have to forget to come here. You are told from the moment of birth that there's no such thing as magic, that you can't manifest with your intention. You can't pull from what I call the sphere of availability, which is kind of like lucid dreaming. And then you're able to pull that through to the physical. I think that the purpose of Earth is to learn how to master the physical with the mind. And so, yeah, if you believe, you're this horrible sinner and you're going to go to hell when you die, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Even the tunnel of light, like I've already set my intention that when I pop out of my body, I'm going home to source. That, you know what I mean? That's where my vibration and my intention is set. And that it's ultimately a choice, right? And I even think it was a choice for me to come here. I still do think that there are forces at play. And like you mentioned, yes, they are part of it. I believe heaven or the spiritual world is like a judicial system. I know there's a court, and ultimately they have to have permission to be able to do things. I still do think that they have gone off the rails. I don't think it was ever the intention of source for there to be blood sacrifice and suffering in the way that we're experiencing it, but I do believe there's supposed to be sorrow and joy.
Well, let me interject something real quick, and I'll turn it back to you. It's possible, this is something else that I consider, that what we experience as the negative, horrible, parasitic influence in our reality may be that. It may be a negative parasite that somehow infiltrated our reality. It's not supposed to be here, and it's basically a battle against our souls and whatever this negative parasite is. And I do consider that possibility, that it's not necessarily a prison planet, but it has been essentially taken over, or they are attempting to take it over.
I would concur. That through my research, that seems to be the common denominator in this math equation of screwed up. But yeah, no, I would agree with that. But like I said, I'm not into fear mongering.
Right.
I want to say it for the 100th time. We hold the power. We're divinely made. We're the ones in control. And if we weren't, they wouldn't have to work so manipulatively, right? They'd sit down at the table and say, let's make a deal. They're not doing that. They're hiding in their levels of the light spectrum, and we're essentially blind as humans. I think we see like less than 1% of the light spectrum with our eyes, and you know this because you've had spiritual experiences, Chris, you can feel things intuitively. I've lived in 2 haunted houses. I've seen things that if I told my therapist about it, I'd probably end up in a padded room. But, I think, again, all these are things that have just been kept vague and in the dark. I think when we pop out of our bodies at the moment of death, that's really where life is at. We lost Rob. I don't know how they can keep the host off.
That's all right. we'll just continue until he gets back. But yeah, I think that essentially after we die, and this is just something that I have come to the conclusion after talking to people with near-death experiences and my own intuitive feeling, that it's like waking up from a dream, and we will essentially be home, and we will know this. We'll have this ultimate knowing that we're home after we have this life experience, whatever this is. Welcome back, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good episode. So Jason in the chat says, "Is there a simulation outside the simulation?" That's a good question. Like, is there like, do you think like going back to sources, like, is I guess our home, or I guess is that what you guys are saying? Like, where you just go?
Well, I was talking with Luke Angstead yesterday about the nature of reality, and if there is baseline reality, what we would consider a baseline reality, if we are already removed from baseline reality, because if we live in a realm of possibilities that have already happened, could already happen, will already happen, and it's all happening at the same time, well, that means if all the possibilities have already happened, then the possibility that we have been somehow trapped inside of another simulation would have already happened, or the world ended already, and the only way we can survive is uploading our consciousness to a simulation. Well, that would have already happened if we live in a realm of infinite possibilities. So could it be possible that we're in one of those possibilities right now? And it gets deep, and that's one of the things you can get lost in the weeds, and I believe you can go a little too deep into sometimes, because I don't think we're going to find out those answers, at least not right now. And I think there's also some answers we're not meant to know about in this experience, and that's also a part of the experience, just in my perspective.
I agree.
Yeah. But this has been fascinating. I was just saying, is there anything else you want to? I wanted to ask you, Chris, what's going on with Forbidden Knowledgenews? Are you working on any new documentaries or anything like that?
I am. In fact, I am leaving Saturday to go to North Carolina and Georgia to film for film number 3. Film number 3 is going to be a little different. It's going to be a sci-fi comedy mockumentary. And we're going to have some fun with this one. It's going to be about a private detective played by myself searching for Chris Mathieu, who went missing after a series of psychedelics and rituals. And it'll go along the theme of the multiverse and being sucked into different dimensions and things of this nature, and myself as a private detective trying to find myself. So we're going to have some fun with this. And yeah, we'll be filming for the next week or so in those locations, and then we're going to come back to Colorado and finish it up and then start editing, and hopefully we'll have that released early next year. And other than that, we'll just be doing our normal thing, about 6 shows a week on Forbidden Knowledge News. Yeah, that's what we got going on.
And then also you have 2 other documentaries too. You have a called Louisiana, and did you want to talk about that real quick? And are those on streaming platforms?
Yeah, they are. And this is a great time to watch it. Halloween season. Go check out Occult Louisiana. That is free on Tubi, on Roku channel, Apple, on a bunch of other streaming platforms. And Doors of Perception. That one was recently released on Amazon Prime. It is still exclusive on Amazon Prime. I'm kind of pissed at them because they won't release it to anyone else yet for some reason. But they're there, so definitely go check those out. We really appreciate that, and great films to watch during the Halloween season. And other than that, you can find all our other content on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. We got our YouTube channel back, so we are back on YouTube, and we're on Rokfin and Rumble and all podcast platforms.
Yeah, what do you think's going on with the censorship? Do you think like we touched on a lot of like controversial stuff today. Do you think they're censoring stuff hardcore still, or like what do you think?
I don't know. It's hard to tell, man. YouTube seems to have backed off, but I'm still shadow banned as hell. I got 30,000 subscribers, but I'm getting a couple hundred views per video. That doesn't really make any sense to me. But yeah, I I think in a way they're have to ease up on it a bit, but at the same time they're still shadow banning people, so it's hard to tell. I was just kicked off of TikTok for the 4th time, so I'm not gonna go back on there.
Dude,
Other than that, yeah,
I got kicked off to TikTok too. It was right.
Yeah.
Me and Lauren Pritchard. Like you guys follow Lauren Pritchard. She's a good follow. She has good content. We both got kicked off at TikTok right around the time that Charlie Kirk got passed away. But I didn't have content about Charlie Kirk. It just happened to be, and it was weird. Like, and I didn't even post anything like that controversial on TikTok. So I don't understand TikTok. I feel the same way as you, Chris. Like, I have a small account on there, but I barely post anything because I'm so sick of them kicking me. TikTok really sucks. You know, they really suck. They do. I don't know.
You experience anything like that, Michelle?
Oh yeah. I was shadow banned before I even had content coming out on YouTube. But so that's what actually I've decided to do is I started up a Patreon. I started up a Substack. They're very reasonable, the subscriptions, but I've decided to it was very hard for me to do this. You know what I mean? I'm not a gatekeeper, but I do have to eat, unfortunately. So what I've decided is that instead of worrying about being monetized by YouTube or TikTok is I'm going to allow the community to support me. And that feels like an equal energy exchange where if they are happy with my content, then, they'll support me. And then that way, I don't have to worry about the likes of YouTube getting bipolar and deciding to take my channel down randomly, because I've watched them do this to Rob. And actually, Rob, I just want to say congratulations on getting your podcast remonetized. I think you said on Spreaker. So that's amazing. Like, yeah. I know we've known each other for months, and I read through all the small print on YouTube's policy when you go to try to get your channel back. And Rob and I were putting our heads together trying to do everything we could. And ultimately what Rob decided to do is, you know what, I'm just gonna have to start over. And that's the amazing thing about this community is it really is a soul family. And we all we come together and we cry together and we go through our problems together and we have our celebrations and successes together. Like, I know Dawn and Spinja, they got married on the podcast, and I mean, like I say, it really is a family. But yes, Chris, I have experienced it. It's frustrating. It's really hard, especially when you feel like you have information that the world wants to know. And, if I was doing a podcast where I was half naked and lip syncing cover songs and doing mascara, I'd probably be viral right now.
Yeah. Hey, well, send me an email, Michelle, and we will get you on Forbidden Knowledge News. We'll get you a guest spot on there.
I would love that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll get that information from Rob after the show, and I'll shoot you an email.
Right on.
Well, yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to promote before we go? And thanks, guys. This was awesome.
No, just check out my films and listen to the show. All
right. And Michelle, do you want to promote anything?
Sure. Well, you can find me. I'm on YouTube. I am the Earth Grid Rescue Mission, or Michelle Whitney 5604. You can find me on Patreon, Substack, and Spotify. I am the Third Eye Roll 007. So it's all spelled out with letters except for the number 007. And those are new, but I'm working I've got a lot of content I'm getting ready to release. Unfortunately, I've just been kind of bouncing around, and hopefully now I'm in a more stable place where I'll be able to start uploading content every day. But I just always want to say, Rob, it's an honor. It's a privilege. I love you. You're like my brother to me. It's a home here at the Typical Skeptic podcast. And Chris, I am really looking forward to being able to be a guest on your show.
Oh, yes. Looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, and you guys are awesome. Like I said, Chris, I've been watching you for a long time. So it's always an honor to have you on my show. And Michelle, like you said, you're like a sister. So yeah, this was awesome. And yeah, everybody that's watching, follow these guys, follow Forbidden Knowledge News. He's being shadow banned, watch his film on Tubi and Amazon Prime. They're really good. I've seen them, Doors of Perception and Occult Louisiana. And then also follow Michelle on Substack and Patreon. And thank you, everybody. And I'll be live again today a couple more times. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. And thank you, everyone, and have a good night.